This is our regular monthly North America Asia meeting.
Mhm.
This is where we focus on basically working on the specifications, the heart of the project.
Okay.
On the line so far today, we have Chris Wood, Chair of Specification, currently co-chair along with Helio, and from April nominated as the sole chair for the work
Mhm.
group in 2024. We also have Daikoku-san and Ninjoji-san on the line. And of course, this is an open call. Other people may dial in at any time. The administrative option for me is to show the antitrust policy notice. We show this at the beginning of every meeting. The full antitrust policy is on the Linux Foundation website. And if you're from a member company, you can ask questions of our counsel, Andy Updegrove. The agenda of this meeting is regular. We have the same agenda every time, so it's very predictable. News, work on the standards, work or information about the reference material and what our education work group is doing, space for any other business, and then we close the meeting. Before we move on, I just want to give huge thanks to Chris for running the meeting on the North America Europe call 2 weeks ago. Chris, thank you so much for doing that. You just brilliant work, and I really appreciate that I didn't have to get up in the middle of the night
Understood.
and a lot of work done. With your permission, Chris, I'll run through the news and then we'll head into the standards. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Brilliant. So on the news front, it's been a busy month. Two of the things I wanted to highlight, we had some very interesting webinars this month. We had a fantastic webinar from the GitHub team talking about GitHub Copilot, talking about AI, regulation, compliance, business risk. One of those talks, I think, where you are going to get a lot out of it. And I'm just going to put the direct link to that webinar in the chat, just so people have it in case they want it. Highly recommended webinar. We had another webinar touching on export control. Now, you may know that we have an export control work group. And the work group has brought together some people who then brought together interesting resources. And one of the most interesting resources we found was that the company ScanOSS, which builds open source tools for open source compliance, had developed crypto algorithms database, which is one of the most relevant things for open source and export control. And they released the database under CC0, so effectively public domain. So a company building data using 5 data scientists had released the most relevant part for export control as publicly available data. And they were just explaining a little bit about that and talking with us about how they would like in the future to house that data with an open project and make sure that anyone can easily find it, incorporate it into whatever tooling they're using, and so on. Link is in the chat to that as well. Now, we had a third webinar this month. It just happened yesterday evening, and that was about a way to calculate vulnerabilities, a vulnerability calculator. But that webinar is not yet released. I'll try to release it in the next day or two. So it's not included in these slides as a webinar ready to view online. But it was excellent, and we had some wonderful questions. So you can watch out for that on our mailing lists. The AI study group was very busy this month. I just put the links into the chat. Short version, the AI study group had a special workshop. Now, the workshop was under Chatham House rule. It occurred at the beginning of the month, and they were talking about the type of issues we need to consider with AI compliance. The workshop was followed by a call for Europe and Asia that recapped the workshop and showed some of the slide decks and so on. So that call, the Europe and Asia call, is recorded and is highly recommended if you want to catch up on what's going on around AI in our study group, optic, compliance, and process management. It's a fascinating discussion, and the next steps will probably include taking the outcomes from there and moving them into proposal of, does this study group become a work group? Is there something to work on when making guides? What's next? So that's exciting, and April will probably be quite full of that. The study group will meet again April 2nd with a 2-hour workshop. It's in our calendar, and I think that's a must watch for those people in our community interested in the field. Yesterday, we had a big event in Shinagawa in Japan. It was all about how ISO 5230 for license compliance, so 18974 for security assurance, are being used to manage all the way from upstream to product in the Chinese ecosystem. It's something called OpenEuler, which is an operating system distribution collective, 22 distributions, 6 of which are enterprise across dozens of companies, 17,000 developers, more than 500 projects, over 36% of the China server market, all using our ISO standards as the basis for their compliance process management and adopting our ISO standard for security for managing that. Interesting set of case studies, 5 case studies, one day. The recording will be out soon. Suffice to say, it was a busy day, and that's why I sound so tired, because that was yesterday. We had our first certifier in South Korea. So we have international certifiers that can do third-party certification in South Korea, but we had the first local one announced this month, which is nice. For those of you who are new to the project, we like to make sure that there's at least 2 options for any commercial service providers in any geography. And we do love to make sure that there are local companies available in the geographies. So this is great to work with this company in Korea. Finally, on the news front, here's the project meetings this week. It's actually, by our standards, a relatively quiet week. What happened on Monday with the deep dive workshop uh, in Shinagawa will lead to a series of recordings released, and this webinar is pending release. You're on the North America Asia call, and tomorrow our automation work group will be meeting at a time suitable for North America and Europe to talk about tooling. Apart from that, there's local work group meetings and so on. This is just a snapshot of the global things happening. All right, that's it for the news. Work on standards and core material. On the last call, Chris, you covered a lot of ground. You covered 3 issues, and there was one commit, which incidentally, I just made a note, nice on the commits in GitHub and so on. I was wondering, could you give us a recap of what happened, what your impression was of, you know, how it went? Do you think there was good consensus and so on?
Yeah, I think the meeting went real well. We had a lot of good discussion, which I think is why we ran a little long. I hate to admit that out loud, but yes, we did.
Mhm.
And had real good conversation and back and forth, give and take on each one of these particular issues. And what I explained to the group at the beginning of the meeting is that I'm trying to get all of our oldest issues addressed first and try and clear the book so that we're not looking at things that were written 1, 2, or 3 years ago and trying to decipher which version they applied to and are they still relevant. So I tried to take the same type of look for tonight on the security assurance specification and a couple of things that I had queued up there on the screen. You can't see them yet, but
No, that's fantastic. And I'm going to hand over the screen to you, of course, in just a moment. Uh,
mm-hmm.
before I do that, I'll put the link into the chat for people, so they can see where are the open issues in general on GitHub. That link is in the chat now. Well, this is it. So to show there were 3 issues covered yesterday, 2 weeks ago. My goodness, my brain is gone. And to very quickly just illustrate those, we have those links. I'll put them into the chat. And this is just a recap in case people wanted to click along. These are the issues covered in the last meeting that Chris just referred to. And just sharing my screen super fast. I'll show these issues here. So there was one commit which was completed, and that closed off something. And that was issue 33. Basically, there was a very simple change. Comprised was changed into may contain to get readability better. And that was committed and closed off. There was a discussion around verification material for training. And this one, I believe, is pending feedback from Andrew or Mark that,
Right.
yeah, it looks like it might be closed, right? There were changes and adjustments, and it might be done. This is issue 38. So I guess we chase Andrew on this to get his feedback.
Yeah, we wanted to get Andrew's feedback before we closed it out.
And then there was this issue, which is 40, basically talking about supplied software. It's quite a long discussion, so it's been rolling for a couple of years. And Chris's note was, it's difficult to move forward without discussing specifics of licensing schemes. We had some additional comments in, and basically it sounds like we need to return to this perhaps on the next North America Europe call, perhaps especially if we can have someone like Andrew, who's a lawyer, dial in to help contextualize the legal. What do you think?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was hoping,
Right.
because I think that there are legal implications with some of the things in that we really need to know whether we're on the right track by actually closing it out, or should we try and address it in a little different fashion.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So maybe we can say we've got to the point where we know what's next. So what's next will probably happen on the next North America Europe call when we potentially have some lawyers on standby.
Yeah, and it's the what just in a nutshell for all of you who weren't on the call, the discussion really centered around what is a distribution of software, and I think there were some differences of opinion and the thing that brought that to mind are the newest class of licenses that
Yeah.
are coming up about regarding software as a service, where you've got something that's running out on a server in a cloud, and the license says that the licenses say various different things about what you have to make available to anyone who uses that software, whether it's internal use by a party that's not a member of your organization, or if it's external and it's someone who's using your, you know, when the license says distribution, is it internal people who don't belong to your company as well? And we just need to kind of iron that out so that we're not giving anyone bad advice.
Prudent approach. And I want to just say that to get to this stage where we have a clear next step, I think is a great accomplishment, because honestly, now the problem is defined. We know exactly who to ask to get some feedback. We should be able to close this off and work towards the more than admirable and super important target you said, Chris, of closing these things off so we don't have lingering issues before we try to address new ones incoming,
Right.
which we have to do with the public comment period, which is probably something we can, I mean, given the progress made here, we can probably move into a public comment period soliciting new comments sometime in the next few months. But closing these off is important housekeeping. Yeah,
Right.
brilliant. So that's where we were, and substantial progress. But there's more to do today. So as I said earlier, I shared the links to the open issues. Specifically, Chris has been working on three issues, I believe, for the table today, 18, 29, and 32. I saw comments on those. So all I'll do is I'll throw those into the chat, and if it's okay, then if you wish, Chris, I'll hand over screen sharing to you to have a look at your stuff, talk it through.
You bet.
Alrighty. My screen sharing is now off. The screen is all yours.
Okay, let's see here. So hopefully I'm going to be able to do this.
That
Uh,
is one wide screen.
yeah. Do you want me to make it smaller?
No, it's up to you. It's hard to read, but I was just impressed by how wide that monitor is.
Yeah, it's a, I hate to say it, it's a special screen for playing real complicated online video games. My son bought it for me for Christmas,
I think I think that's a good thing.
and I like
Ah,
the real estate,
yeah.
but I can see where's the zoom on this thing here. Let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger.
While Chris is just readjusting that, I just wanted to say hi to Prasad and SC and Victor, who joined the call. Prasad, I trust all is well in Silicon Valley.
All well, thanks, Shane. Yeah, I'm just following all the details that you just shared.
Yes.
Helpful. I was missing out on the previous sessions, so I think, yeah, Chris shared some overview, so that was quite helpful. Yeah, so we're just getting our warm weather back since last week. So this past weekend was a good time to just get out after 2 months long or more hiatus. So
And Prasad, I understand, you've been pretty involved with SPDX in recent times.
yes,
And yeah, and just as a side note, our Japanese community has made some big progress with getting SPDX Lite into SPDX Generation 3. And we were also interested to note that SPDX 3.1 with the services profile will potentially support export control. So, some of our work has been converging on these things too. And hopefully we can essentially boost the hard work of the other projects and explain their benefits into our ecosystem. And if there's any priority items for you, Prasad, just let us know so we can include them on our calls and develop further.
yeah, no, appreciate that. I think that's definitely exciting to hear the Japanese community picking up on that. We have actually, as you probably know, last month we had Gary come over and do a overview of the 3.1. So since then,
Right.
so we met within the SPDX service profile forum team. We made some additional progress. So we are actually adding some additional properties to some of those finalized items in terms of both infrastructure governance, data governance, and then apart from the compliance governance that we have, the geolocation based governance. All those three sets of attributes and properties we are building. So hopefully you should see another update probably in the next another a month or two. You should see a lot more progress on the service profile space. So we'll keep you posted there.
That's good news. And for your reference, with Chris's steady hand, we're at the situation where the steering committee met at the end of last year for us, looked at the draft future for licensing and security, said, they appreciate all the work that's being done. They like the comments so far in. Then we were requested to have, well, an adjusted process, a 6-month public comment period, 3-month freeze period. And just prior to activating that, Chris, as the chair, is doing this housekeeping, cleaning up old issues so that our material doesn't have lingering issues from 2019, 2020, 2021 before we hit the public comment period and potentially get more stuff in. After we go through the 6-month public comment period, the 3-month free period, so around the end of this year, back in front of the steering committee will be the dates for the licensing and security ISO standards for the steering committee to review and potentially action to use updates in the next year, next couple of years at their discretion. So nice, solid, reliable standardization work on our side. Chris,
Sounds good. Sounds good.
yeah,
That's makes sense.
yep. We want to make sure we adapt, but we also want to make sure it's nice and smooth. Chris, I noticed that the zooming is not going well, but you know what?
No, it's not.
But I
Uh,
think it's okay though. We can work something out here. I mean, if you just put the link of each page into the chat, people can follow along. And then when it comes to the video, I can actually zoom in our recording of the video as long as the as long as the window doesn't move around on the screen, it'll be super easy for me to do the zoom in for the
okay.
video recording. Yeah.
Well, I was going to try and move it over to a smaller screen. So let me unshare this for a second, and I will move my screen over to not a large monitor and see if
Wow.
it helps. All right.
All righty. Now everyone's wondering how many screens does Chris have?
No, Chris does stuff.
He does stuff.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I need to have multiple monitors to do what I do.
I was looking
Okay.
at the
Whoops.
space. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna fill the void there by saying that I was looking at the SpaceX launch of the Starship the other day, and I noticed that every terminal in Mission Control had set up 3 pretty big monitors together. So it looked like they had 3 27-inch or 3 32-inch monitors per control desk, which awesome real estate. Very cool.
Yeah, and if you've got a Zoom capability for that, so now let's see here. If I want to share my screen, I'm going to share. Which screen am I going to share? I'm going to share the screen and share. Let me know if this
Oh,
looks any.
perfect. There we go. Yeah,
Is that better?
it's beautiful.
All right. So here we go. So this particular screen that's up right now is actually out of the SPDX file, as you can see over here. And the reason why I've got this up is because in our one of the issues that we're going to go to in just a minute here, the SPDX group said that they were going to have a document available to us pretty soon, and it addresses all of these elements and everything over here on this screen right here, where all the callouts are, and there's a lot of references to SPDX in here. And I think that we need to, everything that's going to be in the software assurance specification needs to be more generic and not reference SPDX specifically, because there are a lot of people out there who use a different SBOM tool. So when it's calling out the software package declarations, it is, it's fine like those are, but some of these down here, like custom license and then it says SPDX ID, and then it says core element SPDX ID. And some of them said mandatory, I believe. And we want to do it whenever SPDX is called out by the developer that puts that license reference into his code. But if it's just a regular MIT license or a GPL license or whatever, we do not want to have that say mandatory. You got to use a SPDX reference. And that's the way it looks on the other set of codes. So I'll go back over to there and you can see what I'm talking about. I think I'll go back over there. The bad thing is I had all these queued up and my computer crashed because it was trying to update something and I didn't get all my windows open. That's why I was a few minutes late trying to get back into the meeting. All
Chris,
right.
I have just a basic question. Looking at your the URL that I see. So you are referring currently to the lightweight software profile of SPDX 3.0, right? Because there are other profiles, of course, as you know, being supported by the 3.0, but right now you're only referring to the license profile, or the license, because they have, like, the 3.0 has this notion of other than, I think, the software profile and then the license profile, and then there is a core model. They support all of those three. So this is primarily the light software profile. That's what you're referring to. Is that a fair understanding?
Well, no, because I wasn't sure which profile you were looking at, so I just picked the profile in your tree, and it just is a reference of it refers back to your profile, but it didn't refer to a specific one, as I recall.
Okay. Yeah, because yeah, but I think from a design perspective, I think 3.0, they do inherit pretty much all the profiles that was supported by the earlier 2.x.
Oh, okay.
Which pretty much includes your license profile, software profile, and the core model. But the good news is that the 3.0 will add additional profiles, which is, I think, something like security profile, build profile. Those things are all being added. So if you go under the model folder, you will actually see other models being other classes corresponding to the various other profiles being added. So I think what you're using is basically just inheriting the 2.x into 3.0, which is fine, which makes sense for the purpose of software. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That helps. So let's go up here and I think I got into the Japan work group. How do I get up one more to, there we go, GitHub,
sorry.
OpenChain.
If you click on, yes, of course, Ninjoji-san. I'm just going to help Chris with one item. Chris, near the top left, if you just click the text saying OpenChain project, then you should be one left, yeah. And
there
then
we go.
yeah,
There
and then
we
you'll
go.
be able to choose like license compliance spec or security spec or where we are at. Yep. And then once you're in there, issues, and you're good to go. So the issues are just top left. So yeah.
There we go.
Ninjoji-san, I'm so sorry. Did you have
No, it's okay. But I'm sorry, I couldn't find the point of the discussion because Chris-san, just before you showed us the Japan work groups discussions on the about the SPDX 3.0 right profile. But currently, my understanding is Kobota-san from Sony has already proposed the light profile to the SPDX 3.0 repository. So I don't know why you see the documents on the Japan work groups repository.
There's something that happened in the earlier discussion in Ninjoji-san, which might be useful. I'm just putting a link in. It's for issue 32. Yeah.
Yep. It's this one right here.
Right.
That's up on the screen.
Perfect.
Uh-huh.
Chris, over to you, because basically this is something from Telco, and it seems to define SPDX plus NTIA and talk
Right.
about, yeah.
And one of the things is that you had made a comment last year about it just to make a generic agnostic toward the S-bombs. And that's a perfect remark there.
Well, so now,
Because this is where I was talking about right here, where the comments were mandatory and SPDX. And so it wasn't you that was doing it. It was in this particular work group here, software assurance. Okay. And so there was a yeah, you said that you'd already submitted, or somebody said that you'd already submitted SPDX Lite for a forthcoming SPDX 3 specification,
yes.
and that you were going to put that out. And so I hit that link, and that's how I got over to your work group there. Does that make more sense?
Yes, but in the sense we should update the information, the circumstances to the about the SPDX 3.0 write profile and so on, because yes, Kobota-san commit how to say put some comments on July 26, 2023, but the country write profile for SPDX 3.0 have already committed into the how to say the last of last year, specifically the December, and the country SPDX 3.0 RC2 has merged the light profile.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so there are somehow how to say inconsistency.
Yes.
Yeah, so what I was really looking at was I was looking at I liked what Shane proposed there as an improvement to help align this with the licensing specification. But when I went down and I looked at it and I saw the references to mandatory SPDX, I thought, well, that's not really aligning it.
Yeah, I can understand, and I'm sorry, this is just my personal opinion, but yes, we OpenChain project is under the umbrella of the Linux Foundation, so the SPDX is very familiar with the activity, but in the context of SBOM management, so we do how do you think about the cycle leaks? So I mean, so we are going to think about the SBOM in the way of a more neutral way. So,
Well, I think
I
that's a
mean,
good question. I mean, and I think the answer is fundamentally we can't take sides on, market choice. So,
Right.
Yes. So it depends on the customers and the supplier or producers have what kind of decision to SBOM management. So it can't say so SPDX is dominant.
Right. And I think that the important thing is that as long as your SPDX spec reflects what you're doing in SPDX, you can use that terminology like you're using it right now. But when we are extracting information from a specific spec like that one, and we're extracting some of the content to use as a reference in our specifications, then we need to make sure that we clean it up so that it is agnostic. You don't have to make it that way in the SPDX spec, but the only place it should be mandatory for our use with SBOMs is if the developer has used the SPDX references to their license that they declare in their software. Then it should be mandatory for us to say that this is an SPDX identifier. Does that make sense?
Yes, I can understand, but I'm sorry if I can say in the very minute things, but if okay, so according to the SPDX manner, so we can put the license relating information so-called declared license or concluded license, because SPDX in the how to say in its specification we can say 2 or 3 types of license information, but on the other hand, the Cyclone DX has only one category for the license information. So it very it is somehow difficult to identify in the Cyclone DX the license information is indicated which license information, so declared license or concluded license. So for the convenient to consider that the how to say なんていうのかなtransoperability, interoperability between the Cyclone DX and the SPDX. So in OpenChain specification, so should we how to say treat the only SPDX type data fields is okay in our specification. I mean, if we describe the specification about the SBOM, should we think in more neutral manner?
Right. Well, I mean, I think that we have to be pretty neutral, and I guess this means, right what you said. And the proposal here, the proposal we have on the table in 32 was the telco industry saying, okay, there's different versions and there's different ideas of how to use SPDX. What would be the way to assess a quality SBOM? A supplier turns up with an SBOM and we say, this is good or this is junk. And one challenge then, and you've just identified it perfectly, is what if they're not using SPDX? What if they're using Cyclone? And as Chris said, we want to support the market. We can't tell the market, oh, here's help, but only if you're using one standard that is our sister. And you just identified something in the quality SBOM fields here. Originally, Telco was looking at SPDX. Maybe they've included 2 fields, put it in the chat, that only SPDX supports. And maybe what we need to do, and forgive me if I get this wrong, maybe what we need to do, I think Ninjoji-san, you're saying is double check. And if package license concluded and package license declared are only available in SPDX, and if we make that the minimum definition of a quality we've just excluded Cyclone. And Cyclone's real. It's in the market. People are using it. So maybe we need to reconsider those items. Mandatory in SPDX, but only one license field in Cyclone. Good point.
Right. And I think that there's...
Sorry, I was just about to say that's absolutely very valid point. I think at least, taking some lessons from our 3.1 profile experience, any new attributes that we try to introduce, at least the first version of our spec, we can always introduce that as an optional. So in that way, if they have the value to populate that attribute, then we can expect them to leverage that. But if they don't, we don't make that as mandatory. So that way they consider that as an optional and it helps them with the adoption. So that's a similar principle that I think we followed during our 3.1 profile, service profile evaluation, just FYI.
I think another way maybe of looking at this is when you put together a spec or Telco puts together a spec, is to look at it from how the license is seen by the tools that are using it, and then where did the developer get it from the other end and actually put it in their software that gets seen by the scanner, whether it's SPDX or Cyclone, in order, or another vendor to create their SBOMs with, because that's going to make a difference if you look at it from both directions, and then kind of to make sure that your call outs are correct from both ends, because the developers have historically done it however they care to, and nobody's ever told them any differently. And I did see a good comment from Jeff today in on LinkedIn about how he's I guess has agreement with the GitHub management to work with them on trying to standardize some of this stuff from a licensing perspective with SBOM. So does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I guess my comment then, Shane, is if we've worked that out and we don't need to have the mandatory comments in there, like the telco, then I think if we can clean that up and make it to where it's actually acceptable to both SPDX team and whoever's working with the other SBOM formats, and then working that with telco to get it cleaned up, I think we could use something like you proposed there, and it would be much, much better.
Maybe we can, yeah, that's a really good point. And perhaps uh
So I'm just
let's
to
say
for my understanding, right? So for these attributes related to license related attributes, like I see the ones that says package license concluded, license declared. For all of these, are we proposing instead of making that as mandatory, just say optional? Is that what I'm hearing?
well, Prasad, I think what we're looking at here is that the tags there currently mandatory here in SPDX required NTISD were just intended to show you the provenance of why this was included. But the idea was that all of the fields listed would be required to say, okay, whatever this is, it's a quality SBOM. I'm okay now. It covers what I need.
Yeah.
But perhaps at least at the package license
Yes.
included and declared, we might need to change it to something like package license concluded and or declared, and explain that both are mandatory in SPDX, but other SBOMs might have a different structure.
Right.
Cyclone.
Right, because when we're taking it and we're using it to show what a complete SBOM looks like, we from a software assurance and a software licensing perspective would need to be completely agnostic and not be partial to one SBOM type over another, is I guess what I'm saying. So they're great at the detail level when you're actually working with creating SBOMs and what's mandatory and what's not mandatory in order to meet all of those specific items. But they don't necessarily apply to all SBOMs.
Yeah.
And perhaps we can also say that just in this, again, I'm sticking to the same package license concluded declared. It's of course valid and extremely useful for SPDX to require both. Cyclone doesn't.
Right.
And we can't implicitly throw shade at Cyclone for only saying package license, because people are using it. It is solving market problems. Companies like Siemens have adopted it, a variant of it as the Siemens SBOM. So, we can say it's great to have both, but we can't say if you don't have both, your SBOM sucks. which might be getting a bit too normative, right? Because it's really,
and NTIA SBOM elements. If every country's not using that, then some people might say, well, I don't care about NTIA.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So
would it be possible that instead of saying everything is required, that everything is recommended as a minimum for quality? But that
correct.
leaves the flexibility to say, well, I'm in Ireland. The US government's requirements don't apply to me. Thank you very much. I'm going to use the local one from my government, which is a different field.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Recommended.
So are we making a clear distinction? Because I know from a legal angle, like even when we internally, like within my organization, like when we try to push for a given standard, usually, the required versus mandatory. Mandatory is a bit uh, cautious to be used with caution, especially when it is used in multiple regions. Um, it would be like, potentially there might be a conflict with the respect to local policies. So I'm kind of trying to understand, like some of those, like for example, SBOM type you had indicated as required, some of them as mandatory, right? So are we intentionally making that distinction between these two? That's my question.
The origin of these fields was that the telco industry, so Japan in particular, Finland, Sweden, mostly, I guess, saying that, yeah, we think this is what we want for a quality SBOM, but we're looking at a much bigger jurisdiction when we go all verticals globally.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess the required thing is where we have to consider, is that where we want to go with the exact phrasing? If so, we might need to reduce the fields. Maybe at this juncture, when it's not a spec yet, it's more of a guide. Maybe we want to use terminology like strongly recommended as the minimum for a quality SBOM.
Yeah, I share that the SBOM. I've been I'm relatively new to the community, but has been helping with some of the logistics for the SPDX community. So on Monday there is a meeting. Actually, Ian is actually also from Lockheed, has been organizing that meeting, SBOM tooling workshop, tooling meeting. So there we had a discussion about basically what's a minimum that's common for both specs, both SBOM formats. Gary from SPDX actually agreed that he could participate where necessary to discuss about what's the minimum that's required for both specs. So I think that could be a place where both specs can work together to actually define what's a list of minimum items.
I think that's a great idea. I've been pushing for that for about a year now, but I wasn't quite sure how to get the teams together. And if people from both the CoreDX and SPDX, and I think there's a third SBOM that's getting a little bit of popularity out there, isn't there? Anyway, regardless, that's not really important. But the important thing is that if all of the package SBOM packagers get together and work together to come up and define a minimum list of elements, it would be a great thing.
Perhaps
Yeah,
we
you can.
Oh, sorry, go
Sorry.
ahead.
You can find that the SBOM tooling meeting on the OpenSSF calendar, which is on Mondays in the afternoon.
Is
Sorry, go
is
ahead.
that something that's in the middle of the night here in North America, or is that?
No, that's 5 p.m. Eastern time
On Mondays?
on Mondays. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, I'll look for it and I'll see if I can dial in for that because I think that would be a good discussion to listen to anyway.
That's SPDX, SBOM tooling meeting, is that right?
No, that's actually you can say kind of neutral ground. It's OpenSSF, open software.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Omkar's lot. Okay,
Mhm.
cool. All right. I'm just going to make a memo. Victor, that's really useful. Yeah, okay. So OpenSSF SBOM tooling workgroup meeting. It's at every Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. So that's going to put it impossible time for Asia, but it's really good. Is it 1 hour meeting, Victor?
Yeah, it is 1 hour meeting.
Okay, I'll just make a note.
Well,
Time
5
zone.
o'clock Eastern would be, boy, that'd be earlier in your evening than 1 o'clock
You know,
my time.
so it's going to be really early morning here. Not bad.
Oh, okay.
It's doable. 6 a.m. Asia can do it. Okay, I'll just put a memo that it repeats weekly. And do you have the dial-in details, Victor? So we can put them. I'm
Yeah, I
gonna.
shared
Oh,
the
yeah.
link.
All right, cool. So what I'm gonna do is I'm literally gonna add this to the OpenChain global calendar. I'm just gonna mark it as external OpenSSF meeting.
Okay.
And yeah, that's going to be on the OpenChain OpenChain calendar moving forward. Brilliant. Would it make sense then? We have some cool material here with this. Telco have worked on this. They've got some stuff. Apart from the package license concluded and declared, most of it seems probably generic. So maybe we can do one final wash of this, move it from required to highly recommended, double check with telco, and then go, tell the OpenSSF SBOM group, here's what we've got from industry so far. As you do your work together, maybe we can play together, make sure we're all aligned.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know that there is a movement here afoot in the United States to start getting more recognition from our broader industry, especially with the government side, on licensing is just as important as vulnerabilities, because the original requirement from NITA came out and they only were speaking to software vulnerabilities. They didn't mention licensing one time. And that was always kind of a sore point for me because I created a software bill of materials that was just licensing copyrights and attributions 20 years ago. And I've been delivering them with our software for all this time. So I was rather incensed when I saw what the government came up with. Okay. Meanwhile, back to the ranch.
Well, it's a good point, Chris, that pulling these threads together, an exciting problem happens. People come up with an idea, they're trying to address that. Maybe they forget that we've covered a lot of ground, and if we coalesce, everyone benefits. So I love where we're going with this discussion. So thank you very much.
All right. So if we can get that cleaned up to everyone's satisfaction, I think that would be a great one to just go ahead and use the cleaned up language and just go ahead and close it out when you get it. Because I think that'll take care of our problem that was initially brought up.
That's great. And I can take an action item to try to just make a note on the text, if you want, and then you can see if that's okay for you.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, we had something from Ninjoji-san. Ninjoji-san, you had a couple of questions. First of all, you shared some study material, a link about SPDX and concluded licenses and mandatory fields. maybe you can explain that briefly. But second of all, and we can probably answer this quickly, you asked in the security spec, do we cover VEX and VDR? I believe in the security spec, we're focused solely on known vulnerabilities in CVEs at this juncture.
Okay, I understand. Thanks.
Yeah, there's a little bit more than that, but that's primarily what we're focused on. Yeah.
It was,
I
if I remember,
did.
Chris. Oh, go ahead. Apologies. No, I was just going to say, Chris, I seem to remember that you mentioned that we were going to put out like the biggest fire and then we'd look at the other ones.
Yeah. No, but that's fine. If somebody's got something to show that's relevant to this discussion, that's probably satisfactory to the team.
Ninjoji-san, what was the other material that you sent in about SPDX and SBOM? You put a couple of links in there. You said it was research about license information and concluded license information. Is that something we should cover on the call?
Shane, would you please tell me again?
Sure. You put a link in the chat
Yes.
related to research about SPDX and information in SBOMs. Can you give us some context about, is that something we need to look at, or was it just some background that people are doing work around this?
The reason why I made this table is to to clarify what data field is mandatory for the SPDX 3.0 write profile. And in that context, the telco work group has already making the data field for the SBOM specification. So write profile should consider about the telco's SBOM specification when we propose the light profile なんだろうな、within the last year. So in the sense, we studied the other kind of documentation or guidelines from the other organizations, so like in German, so BSI, Information Security Sections also, and the other guides so like NTIA minimum element also. So in this context, we made a comparison table of the SPDX data field.
Oh, okay. That'd be interesting to see.
Yeah. Ninjoji-san, would it be possible to just add that to the issue online, to issue 32, just for reference, so we have it?
Okay.
Thank you. And my action item is to go to issue 32 and do a quick re-edit just about the required versus highly recommended. And then we just run that past telco, and who knows, it might be ready for next week to go to the OpenSSF SBOM discussion.
Okay.
That'd be great. All right, we probably don't have time to address the other two issues. I think I'd put a.
We have to put a pin in it and come back later.
Yeah, I think we do, because you've still got some charts to run through real quick if you want to close out the meeting. So I'll stop sharing.
All righty.
Okay, so over to you.
All right. Gosh, we spent a lot of time on this, but it's important. So that's brilliant. We'll come back to the other issues next time. Okay, we'll keep this short. The work on education group is ongoing. You can get the last meeting, the last meeting recording, and there was some really good work on basically supplier education leaflet. And version 2 of that, generation 2, is nearly ready. Hopefully later this week, the final draft will be ready. for final review and for the Japanese community, which originated the leaflet, to provide final feedback. So that's really it. That education is doing some good work, and you can see a recording. You can see what they're working on. Links in the chat. Apart from that, any other business?
Hey, Shane, just a quick question. When will be the next AI study group
Yep.
call?
It's on the 2nd of April. So Prasad, I'm not sure if you're part of the um, the mailing list for AI. Would you like me to add you to it so that you get the notifications and so on? At the very least, I'm just going to add you to the invite for that ongoing study group right now.
Yeah, that'll be really helpful. Because I know there is that study group. We initially talked about it in the last I think
Right.
the last call we had. So I think the first study group meeting I didn't get a chance to join due to some of the org priorities, but there are some interesting updates that I wanted to share as well with, I think, Jimmy and team, if they are part of the study group.
Oh, yeah.
Because there are some interesting provisions that we can do based on some of the ongoing GI based tracking activities we are doing, at least in my organization. So I wanted to share that to kind of bring it to a fruition and see if we can do something at the to expand our the open chain to include
Absolutely.
that. Right.
I've just
So, yeah.
added you to the calendar invite for AI. If anyone else wants to get the monthly workshop meeting, let me know. I'll add you to the calendar as well.
Thank you, Shane. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I have another question before the meeting is
Sure.
over. So I know most of the discussion about licensing software licenses. I know Andrew Katz from UK has created some nice hardware licenses, and so I wonder for hardware. So for example, Cisco, just example, Prasad, where are the licenses for hardware or just I guess non-software licenses captured?
Yeah. That's primarily handled by our supply chain organization. They have their own process for it. However, there are certain special use cases, primarily when it comes to, let's say, firmware, for example, where the firmware actually is packaged along with the hardware, but it is a dependency for the software to function. Those type of things we capture as part of our software compliance process. However, anything that is pure hardware, that is up to so there is a separate hardware group, hardware engineering organization, and that organization has its own set of compliance operations process that's again in association with supply chain. They are the ones who are keepers of that.
So in other words, the regular SBOM like generation tools that like scan software to capture the licensing information, that does not apply to the hardware side.
That's right. For now, that is not. Yeah, that's right. So we apply those auto discovery, all the scans that you are talking about. That's primarily covers all our software offerings. With that said, the hardware, those are still managed and handled, but not necessarily through the same process that we do for software.
Yeah, so this part, Shane, I feel that's not very clear. I'm not sure, does OpenChain have any group that go over what's going to happen to, how to capture the non-software side? Because this will be becoming more, I think with AI system, there could be more complications there, how to capture all the information.
Right.
I can sorry, I was just about to say that, yeah, I think this was, in fact, was a very, very same question that came up in one of the prior, we had our SPDX forum. I know not right away, but I know that the 3.2 the SPDX, the plan was to support a hardware profile altogether. And that is going to be so in addition to the current profiles that you see for like security AI profile, that is already supported in 3.0, come 3. I believe not the 3.1 because 3.1 is somewhat finalized, but I think 3.2, they were talking about supporting a hardware profile. That was something that, again, it's probably it's just the initial discussion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would like to know more about that because I'd like to really participate in that.
Yeah. And to your point, I think it's absolutely a very valid point because when I go look up the industry, right, there are there are already out there. There are some other non-SPDX based standards out there, like one of the prominent one being SPDM. SPDM is, I think it's one of those standards proposed by the Security Protocols and Data Models Working Group. So this is SPDM based standards is something that some, if not all, hardware, like the new hardware devices are, at least the hardware offers are going to be based on. That is already being talked about. So that we may have to have something equivalent in SPDX to support hardware profile. Although I don't think it is supported currently in 3.0 or even in 3.1, but 3.2 there is a plan. And then from what I heard is that they were planning to call the SPDX itself as, instead of software package data exchange, it's probably going to be called system data package exchange when it comes to 3.2 spec.
yeah, I attended a couple of the hardware profile meeting. So that's work in progress. But how do you even if you have a spec, how do you capture that information in real world from the hardware?
Exactly.
That's my question.
Yeah, because it's not in the metadata for the hardware.
Right. So that, I think the individual organization, at least I can tell, like at Cisco, we do have as I said, there is a parallel hardware compliance process. As part of that process, they have multiple mechanisms to capture that. Along with the hardware, even the profile itself, right? Like you probably are looking at even certs. Like these are CA issued or PKI certs that are that reside on the hardware. And so capturing that, again, there are multiple mechanisms to do that, like starting with simple crowdsourcing from the engineering, as well as auto discovery, which is something that is a combination of that mechanism being incorporated, at least in the parallel process. But again, this is handled by the individual organizations, on their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because then you'd have to have another slice off of that for the IoT devices.
Right.
Because they don't have nearly as much floor space to house extra things like license certificates and so forth.
Yep.
It's hard to even get them encrypted because they don't have enough floor space to hide that software on.
That's right. Yep. And the one that I was just saying about the SPDM, I'm just sharing that on the chat just for your reference. This is something that I know not right away, but I know in future there are some hardware systems that will probably be coming out with this specification. So if you look at that, it probably supports a bunch of attributes, and I think we may have to take some cues from here to see how these can be accommodated, right? If you're talking about at some point interoperability between our hardware profile and these standards such as SPDM, we need to look at these, the ones that is already out there.
Thank you, Prasad.
Yeah, thanks for the info. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to have some, whether it's group or some discussion in this area.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Yep. Yeah, this
Cool.
is definitely a challenging area because we are very much getting there to a point where, that you have this combination of, the software is not software anymore. Obviously, you have a whole range of the entire stack that is being shipped as an offer. So you have to have a complete visibility of the stock, not just the software stack. Definitely we need to think about.
I suppose the advantage is that we have plenty to do, so our existence as professionals is looking reasonable for the next few months at least.
I think so.
All right,
All right.
everyone. Thank you for a very productive meeting. Have a beautiful day. And 2 weeks, Chris will be back championing spec editing. And before that, we'll have a chance to do the GitHub updates and so on. Take
All
care.
right.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you,
Thank
Shane.
you. You too.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
Thank
nice rest of the week. Thank you.